Hello, Marvel Rivalers. My name is KarQ. Welcome to another week of reading the Reddit posts of r/Marvel Rivals, where we start off with an absolute banger and a removed post. Here we go. First one of the week with 8,000 upvotes, but a post removed by the moderators, probably because it was a little emotionally charged. It's titled Spider-Man, Magik, Black Panther players develop the same god complex as OW1 Genji and Doomfist players. Now let me lay the foundation for the non-Overwatch players. Genji and Doomfist are the same archetype as Spider-Man, Magik, Black Panther. They are dive DPS duelist heroes with a pretty high skill ceiling and very rewarding when you get a lot of resets, when you pop off and, do the right thing and you can kill all 5 or 6 players on the team pretty damn easily. Genji has a reset mechanic similar to Black Panther, and Doom, old Overwatch 1 Doom, had a high movement, uppercut, can glide across the map very quickly. I glanced through the comments earlier. I'm not going to go through them. Most of them were just memeing back a little bit, but I want to answer the actual post itself. I actually think the word God complex is a little too intense, but I understand where this poster is coming from. What they're basically trying to say is that it's much more infuriating for a duelist player to spend, 50 hours mastering their hero and their movement, only to be countered by a much easier hero in the support category that presses a single button, where the skill floor is a lot higher, but the ceiling's a lot lower compared to their duelist hero, which requires a lot more intensity and a lot more practice and finesse to get through. But this is the same old story. This is how it goes. Duelist players or DPS players like Genjis and Dooms and the Magics will complain, and the support players will also have no sense of self-awareness and be like, yeah, that's right. You guys have god complexes, get good. And I feel like this user might be a support player, and they're kind of just adding fuel to the fire. You have to understand, I'm also a support and strategist player, and I can firmly say it is much easier for me as a strategist to press a single button to deny a Psylocke ultimate. All I have to do as Loki is put down a couple clones, even press my rune, and her ultimate's pretty much useless because it bounces between the clones, or I just press the rune button. Same with the Spider-Man ult. I can press my Invisible Woman ultimate and then it's over, or they come in and then I just boop them as Invisible Woman, or if I'm a rocket player, I dash away, heal, and if somebody dies from their ultimates, they get rezzed. The floor is a lot easier to get baseline value, and you have to understand they're frustrated. It doesn't help when they're frustrated and all you support players on Reddit and social media go, just get good, haha. You're not helping the cause. We can find a way to kind of alleviate the pain points and make these heroes feel more rewarding, while at the same time not babying and dumbing down the support role too much. That being said, I think this is a bit of an outlier. I've certainly seen many Spider-Mans, Magik, and Black Panthers pop off. Same with Overwatch Genji players and Doomfist players. People who play these heroes exclusively will vent very loudly, a lot of streamers, and it becomes an echo chamber where everybody who follows these streamers or these content creators who play these high output DPS heroes, and they'll be like, yeah, Genji's bad, and then they say Genji's bad throughout all 8 years, but Genji's been serviceable for the most part. There's some metas where it wasn't favorable, but it doesn't mean it was unplayable. There's times where people said he was unplayable, then he got picked in the OWCS by top Genji players. Same with these heroes. I think Spider-Man's actually in a pretty decent spot right now, especially with Venom Dive being here. I think Magik is a severely underrated, well, I wouldn't say underrated. A lot of people know how good Magik can be. She doesn't necessarily even have to dive support. She can actually be so annoying for tanks because you can slash through Magnetos and slash Doctor Strange shields and uppercut them and CC them. Black Panther I've seen a lot less of, I won't lie to you, but So again, the takeaway point is people in general just don't like it when they can't play their hero and can't have value for their ultimate. And that's what, DPS ults and DPS players will often say. But a support player, when they press their ultimate, it will almost always guarantee value. There's no way to deny it, unless you literally kill me during my cast animation of my support ultimate or something like that, which can happen, which is frustrating. If I'm about to clone somebody as Loki and I die, that's usually on me, and I won't really blame them for doing anything. But a Spider-Man player, when he sets it up, goes for a crazy swing, grapples, and goes for the "don't mess with the amazing Spider-Man," but then they just press a single button, that denial is a crushing weight on their soul. That's pretty much what they're going at. Anyways, this next post is actually a continuation, probably in response to that last one, with a lot of upvotes as well. It says, Dive mains calling for nerfs. This subreddit is seemingly full of people looking to nerf everything and anything that remotely inconveniences their playstyle, and believe they should be able to brute force their way through any disadvantage. This is a hero shooter game with a bunch of different roles. The dive meta is super strong in this particular version, or this patch. It supports almost having 0 consistent anti-dive ability. We have 4 diving tanks and at least 15 diving heroes heroes. Of the anti-dive characters, we have Penny, Namor, Bucky, and Punisher. Yet the sub filled every day is coming for the head of Namor and Bucky. These players should be ignored. They do not care about counterplay or skill. They just want easier lobbies to one-shot supports and squishy DPS with their dive characters. That is all. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. You know, I kind of agree with this. I wouldn't say like you can ignore these players. Everybody's frustrations and their voice kind of matters in terms of like how they perceive the game, and the community perception, depending on the archetype and the role you play, is important to consider when you like balance the game. That being said, I haven't heard anybody ask to nerf Penny or Namor recently, but I've definitely heard Bucky for sure, mostly because he can do everything, and I think he's an S tier hero. He's not even an anti-dive, he's an anti-everything because of his stun hook, his displacement, high damage, and his like average like overall tankiness. But that being said, a lot of heroes have some tools to mitigate dive. For example, there's like anti-dive abilities such as Luna's Freeze, Mantis Sleep, Adam Warlock with his Soul Bond, and you can res if you're in a good spot. But then there's counterplay against that because everybody comes back at a low HP, and the dive hero can wait for that and then outplay it. So like, I wouldn't say you should fully ignore people who are calling for anti-dive and calling for nerfing triple support. You want to nerf frustrating pain points for the mass population, as many people as you can. And I do agree to a certain extent that triple support was kind of boring to play. Not frustrating for me because I'm playing I'm the support player, not playing the dive hero or the DPS hero into it. So I'm not frustrated. I got a little bored. So I'm fine with like a global change that can like mass appeal to as many people as you can. But it's very hard to please everybody in this game. So I think that's the point this user's trying to get. There's so many different roles, and you know, if you try to like please one group, the other group's gonna get pissed off. So like, you have to kind of pick your battles here wisely, and I would say pick the one that pleases the most people. So we nerfed overall alt charge. I think that's fine. And then you can just slightly tune down like the outlier heroes, but not because they're specifically good against dive. So not Penny Namor in my opinion, but like Bucky, for example, is like extremely good overall, that I do think he needs to be toned back down to like how he was in season 0, where he doesn't gain as much HP, and maybe add some fall off damage. So like, he's not strong in every aspect of his kit. Kind of like how Doctor Strange has slowly been nerfed a little bit over the seasons, but he's still pretty good. But like, because Doctor Strange could do everything at high damage, good tankiness, could shield. That's why, and he's got like crazy portal tech, and like he can lock people in the spawn. He could do everything. So you want to, you know, maybe slightly nerf all the generalists, but like you can keep archetypes and sub roles strong in certain situations, and that's the beauty of the hero shooter. And that's why one tricking, you know, while you can play how you want, like it's tough to have favorable matchups everywhere. That's kind of like what you have to accept when you play one hero or one type into everything. Like if your entire hero pool is playing Spider-Man and Black Panther, you're gonna have a rough time if they play stuff to counter you. But like, that's, you know, not to say it's impossible to win, but you have to learn how to either play around it or B, pick another hero. That's just kind of how it goes in a hero shooter. Next post, it's not that I don't want to play tank, it's just that there's no tank I want to play as. If I absolutely have to tank, I would play Magneto. Not because I want to play Magneto, but because his kit is the easiest to play. Right now we have 9 tanks, and 5 of them are dive tanks, which means if diving is not your playstyle, you would only have 4 options left, and out of the 4 options, only 2 of them can raise a shield. Root walls do not count, they're not shield, they're obstacles, which means if you're a traditional defensive tank player like me, you'd only have 2 options left, Doctor Strange and Magneto. I know this game came out for like 3 months, but it's clear that the dev priority is DPS. Blade is already teased for next season, as is a new DPS that will add up to a total of 21 DPS heroes. Until the devs add more Vanguard heroes, the solo tank problem will persist. Okay, obviously there's a disproportionate amount of DPS heroes. It's the same thing with Overwatch, but like, I will say the solo tank problem will still persist if there's like, even if they added 5 or 10 more tanks, solo tank will still persist if you don't have a role queue that forces 2 tanks, because tanks are still the least popular role no matter what. It says you like the traditional defensive shield based tanks because you like Doctor Strange and Magneto. Well, you would have to play Magneto, and like, I feel like you would like Doctor Strange if you like the defensive options, but like, these are tank heroes that have like a lot offering to their kit, and if you don't even find these ones fun, I don't even think 5 more with the shield may be appealing to you. Again, that kind of goes back to the point where like, tanks are just like a thankless role, because a lot of times like the way they play and their style, where you have to push up and make space, it's very frustrating when your team doesn't follow up, and a lot of like your damage blocked and damage mitigated doesn't show up on the scoreboard to make you feel like you're contributing, even though you probably are. So yeah, even if I do agree there's a disproportionate amount, and like adding more tank variety could be good, but I don't think it'll solve the overall problem of solo tank unless you hard force role queue. This is just kind of how it goes. One option is to add more team ups, and some of them there are a couple of team ups, right? Like that are both for the tanks. I think there's like the Captain America and the Thor. There's like Venom, Penny, but a lot of them are like kind of like mismatched styles. I think the Venom, Penny is like very polar opposites in how they play. But like even with some of these incentives, like the team ups, you can see that like even getting 2 tanks on the team is still incredibly unpopular and very hard, at least in the average ranks. Getting 2 tanks on your team is way more prevalent in the higher you go, simply because people are trying to play to win more often. But I don't actually think it's like a problem per se, because you can absolutely win. It's just not as fun for the solo tank player themselves. It's a 1-person problem, while the 5 other people may be having an okay time. Although me personally, I do prefer playing with 2 tanks. It kind of like gives me more to do as a support player, to heal more people. And I guess the other last point I want to make is that some of these tanks are not designed to be a solo tanker, like you said. Not necessarily because they're dive options, but because solo tanking as a Thor or solo tanking as a Penny isn't very conventional on how you would approach a hero shooter, where you have like a front to back tank taking space, because Penny can play pretty far back to kind of protect your team, versus like, you know, having a solo tank Thor who's like in their backline, you have nothing in the front. You know, it's very different. So again, unless if some of these tanks are not designed to be solo tanks, and you even have the team ups that are like kind of opposite on how they play, and people are still not playing it, it's just tanks are just unpopular, man. I don't know what to tell you, no matter how much variety you add. Okay, next post. Is there any reason why he takes 5 leap years to reload? It's a picture of Magneto for the audio listeners. So why does Magneto take 5 leap years to reload? I can agree his reload feels a little slow, but because he has so much stuff in his kit, it's just one of the dials that NetEase and Marvel Rival devs kind of tuned to kind of balance him, so he doesn't have like permanent uptime on his damage. That being said, I'm pretty sure you can animation cancel his reload by like pressing the right click, if I'm not mistaken, or the secondary fire, which is like the metallic charge shot for the console players. But yeah, y'all heard of the 0 damage rocket, but apparently 0 healing rocket is also a thing. I played ranked and got matched up with this guy. I look at the name and I'm like, nah, we're cooked. Apparently not. My guy was in there melting backlines and tanks all together. Okay, so it's a screenshot of a 21 kills, 6 death, 0 assist rocket with 0 healing, 10,000 damage, 0 heals done. So he just pretty much played as a DPS hero. They won the game, but I will say these gimmicky accounts are so frustrating to play with. Like, I can understand you can absolutely still win by playing unconventionally, playing like the 0 healing rocket or the 0 damage rocket, or playing like flank only whatever hero. They had this stuff in Overwatch too, where like there was like a no shield Reinhardt, or like backline shielding Orisa only and not playing a frontline tank. You can still win games, but it doesn't change the fact that it's so annoying to play with when they're on their team, because like you're kind of forced to adapt to how they play the whole time. You know, for me, if I get them on my team, like it's just a single game for me. I'll play it out and I'll probably just avoid them to not play with them again. Not because even if we won, simply because it's just not fun to play with gimmicky accounts where like you expect even just like throw a little healing if you can, because you're just literally avoiding a certain part of the kit where there's absolutely points in that game where it was perfectly viable and probably the best option to shoot a heal instead of just damaging there as rocket, for example, or whatever, the opposite. You know what I mean? So next one. New Adam Warlock tech discovered. What is this? Okay, it's a video. Okay, it's an Adam Warlock dying, and he's in his respawn ghost, chasing the Punisher back to the spawn, and he is staring him down, and then he canceled the respawn. Okay, that's a 16-second respawn. First of all, or no, sorry, 13-second respawn, I think, right? First of all, this is definitely a bot quick match game. There's 0 chance a real Punisher player does that. This is like an AI game where like obviously people know about this now, where if you lose like what 3, 4, 5 quick matches in a row, the game will put you against literally AI or bots to make you feel good when you pop off, because the way he was staring him down and backing up replicates that. But that being said, this is, I wouldn't call it a tech, but this is actually a really good Adam Warlock tip. When you die as Adam Warlock, your respawn time is still tied to your cocoon. So like if you're gonna die and you already know you don't want to waste the cocoon res, you might as well waste your time by like threatening the respawn, by floating around as that gold ghost. Obviously, like real players may not do this, but you're effectively trading. Like you took this Punisher out of the fight because he's just backing up and staring at you. So you died, but technically he died in a way as well, because he's not adding anything to the team fight anymore. So it's a good thing to do in general when you've already committed or already know it's a team fight wipe, right? Maybe you're the last one to die as an Adam Warlock, and like your team is already coming back. Like you're already technically in respawning as the time is ticking down, right? And if you're like making all 3 or 4 enemies look at you like, ooh, I'm a scary ghost, and then cancel at the last second, you will respawn instantly. But the 13-second spawn is a bit I think the game is a default 10-second respawn, so you can cancel it a little early. I wouldn't let the timer fully run out so you can actually come back. But you can definitely buy time and buy some space for your team, especially if they're staggered and they're already coming back a little earlier than your Cocoon would. I think in overtime in this game, this respawn times are longer, so you could probably wait the full amount. But if you're already in overtime, you might as well use the Cocoon because you want to win that damn fight because it's overtime. But this is a good Adam Warlock tip in general. I like it. Next video, I just wanted to force Luna ult. What is this? Star-Lord? Popping his ult? Oh my god. So in this clip, Star-Lord presses ult, Loki pressed the green totem, the green rune button, Doctor Strange ulted, Luna ulted, and their Invisible Woman ulted. You literally traded 4 incredible cooldowns for 1. That is crazy good value. It's a good clip. This kind of just shows like basic hero shooter mechanic of resource trading. When you break down this game into its basic constituents, evidently, you know, trading cooldowns one after the other. You use one cooldown, they use a defensive cooldown. You use your Storm ult, they use like an Invisible Woman ult. And stacking them can be very detrimental for the defensive side. I guess the point I want to make here, if you can pull something like this off, where you force enemies to use something, you don't have to fully commit. I actually find it very annoying when my DPS players press their ultimate, for example, the Star-Lord, he forces many ultimates, but then he keeps going in, even though he knows he like traded a lot of resources back simply because he doesn't want to waste the rest of his ultimate because he popped it and he's like, oh, let me just keep going in with it. It was the same thing in Overwatch where Genjis have the blade, they pull out their Dragon Blade, which is his ultimate for the non-Overwatch players, and they like fully commit to it. Or if the Genji dashes up and the Ana nano boosts him, and then he notices like as soon as he got nanoed, like 3 of the enemies pop their ult in response, he doesn't even have to pull out the blade anymore. You did your job in a sense where you literally baited them out. You don't have to overcommit. You can just back up, wait till it's over, and then go back in. So in this example, if you're Star-Lord, I'm so thankful that this clip demonstrated this Star-Lord understood that and backed up. It's the worst when they overcommit and then they bitch at their teammates like, why didn't you follow up? I forced 4 ults. Yeah, and you forced 4 ults and then you died. So even though they burned some resources, like they're powerful right here. They have invincibility, and you going in, you died, and then that may have a trickle effect where your teammate is like, oh my god, my Star-Lord's making poor decision, but like I don't want him to yell at me, so I'm just gonna follow him anyways. And you just end up dying, even though you made a good trade indirectly where they force a lot of things. You just kind of like tempted your team to make a bad choice because they decide to follow you in that aspect. But that's just the point I want to make. Don't overcommit. Take the trade, back up, and be patient. Next post is, please stop staggering. Oh, it starts off with an edit at the top. My bad, assuming there's a lot of people, I was assuming there's a lot of people familiar with hero shooters and I was wrong, so simply take this thread as a little tip. Okay, so honestly thought that after all those years of Overwatch, people would mostly know what staggering is and that you should avoid it, but I realized the problem is still common in every rank. I assumed in GM Plus it would disappear, but then I saw people do it even in Celestial, so stop staggering. The rule is very, very simple. Whenever your team dies and you can clearly see that in a moment or so you are going to be killed as well, just die. Stop doing this silly 1 versus 6 thing where you start running around for 10 to 15 seconds before you die, because it changes nothing and only harms your team. Example, let's say your team dies, you somehow stay alive and the enemy's trying to finish you off. You manage to do your cool movement tricks you've seen Necros doing and ultimately die after 10 seconds. Your team is already getting close to the point for another push, but because you just died late, you're leaving them with the following choice. Either they push as a 5 versus 6 and pray for a quick kill to even it out to make it 5 versus 5, which doesn't really happen on a higher level, or number 2, wait for the Necros wannabe to come back from respawn, literally doing nothing and feeding while in the meantime. So keep in mind it works both ways. Back in Overwatch, whenever you wiped the team and killed D.Va as the last one, you would call for your team to not finish the baby D.Va for as long as you possibly can. It's kind of the same as with the Hulk and Rivals. If Hulk dies last, you can keep him hostage for as long as you possibly can, ideally until the enemy team is already getting close to the point, so you can simply pull the trigger on baby Hulk and make it 6 versus 5 for free. Of course, it's much harder to pull off with random people, but in Overwatch, it quickly actually became a habit for most players. I know the topic is much broader. For example, you could have Strange on your team, it's like 95% domination, and your sets Iron Fist or Spider-Man. You obviously want to buy more time and staggering so your Strange can come back with a port. But once you understand the basics of staggering, you will know when to do it and when not to. Yeah, so obviously I know this game has not captured some non-Overwatch players, but they visualized it pretty well for you. Every time you die or you're out of the fight for, 10 seconds or more on the respawn and another 10 or 20 seconds to walk back to the fight. And if you're the last one alive and you know you can't win the 1 versus 6, you either just jump off the map or like back up to your team if possible to regroup faster, or hide if they're not chasing you. Like, don't waste your time and risk dying in an inopportune moment when your team is ready to re-push. Then you're literally putting your team at a disadvantage. So the baby Hulk thing is a good thing. The reason why this works is because baby Hulk, or Hulk not in his green form, Mr. Bruce Banner over here, is a low damage threat, not really going to kill anybody. So you keep him in that form and then you stare at him and see if he wastes his time. And then when you see the enemy team come back, you kill him. So you're obviously already at a 6 versus 5 advantage. But there's not much to add. Stop staggering if you can help it. When people call for a regroup, generally you should do that. You have a better chance of winning the team fight when you're all pushing at full force and pushing at different angles at the same time versus dying and trickling is the other word for this, one at a time. Next one, you are blind if you don't have your ally health bars on. As a strategist main, one thing I advise all of you to do is go in your settings, go into keyboard, make sure it's on all heroes and set ally health bars to on. I am under the suspicion majority of you non-strategist players, aka the DPS and tank mains, don't even have the setting on, and it's definitely costing you all your games. Imagine the following scenario. Your healers are pouring their heals into you, but you refuse to take cover for a second to get back to full health, and now they have to do this to 4 people. On top of that, half of you are constantly pinging for heals only to die because you need to prioritize 2 people to survive. You start crying in VC after your death and say GG no heals, but you don't even I'm not reading the rest of this. This is just a critical piece of information. Also, if you're a tank main, you don't have this setting on already. What are you even doing? I'm pretty sure you had to solo tank many times, and Magneto is probably the best solo tanker right now. I'd actually argue Groot is right now, but anyways. So chances are you played Magneto in many of your games. How are you even prioritizing who your bubbles go to if you can't see their health? You're blind without the setting. One whole ability gone to waste because you don't know your teammates' health. TLDR, probably should have just read this one. Turn your allied health bar setting to on. Yeah, I'm surprised this setting isn't on by default, but maybe it's for optimization. A lot of games don't do that. Every time I play like Diablo or like Path of Exile or even Overwatch and now Marvel Rivals, allied health bars are off by default. It's so strange, but any case, turn it on. It's really good for Magneto, obviously, because you can actually see your damn teammate's HP bar. I turn it on always for all roles where possible, and yeah, that's the takeaway point. Turn the setting on, get the information you need. The last post. Ooh, people are not gonna be happy with this one. The rank bell curve and why your teammates are bad. There are a lot of misconceptions about the ranks in this game, and that often leads to a lot of confusion about the types of things you see in your games. For example, this subreddit has a lot of people posting how their Grandmaster teammates do XYZ thing wrong, and they shouldn't be in GM, or how anyone can reach GM with just a little elbow grease because of how the rank system works, but both of these takes are wrong. Let's address them in reverse order. The first take is, anyone can be in GM. You win more points than you lose, and chrono shields exist. The poster says, this doesn't make any sense. If you sat a chimpanzee at the computer and taught him how to press find match and lock in a hero in return for a grape, and somehow tweaked his account to gain 100 points per win and only 10 points per loss, the chimpanzee at best would reach silver or gold before the sheer unbelievable disadvantage of having only 5 players on the team against 6 on the other made it damn near impossible for him to win. Even at 10-to-1 odds, people who are in GM are consistently able to perform against other people who are in GM, otherwise their rank would reflect it. Which leads into point B. My teams in GM are so bad. How are they in this rank? They're supposed to be Grand Masters. Now this is where Marvel Rivals pulled a little trick on the gaming community by shifting the bell curve. So typically in the most popular multiplayer games like League of Legends, CS2, Dota 2, Apex Legends, Valorant, Overwatch, etc., the bell curve of players of the rank is extremely bottom heavy, like your mother, with upwards to 70 to 90% of players not even reaching gold. Efforts have been made over the years to iron this curve out, mainly from adding additional ranks, but it remains true. Most of these games have a Grandmaster tier or something sharing its level of prestige, almost always right before, the Apex tier, consisting of the absolute best of the best players, the 0.1% or even the 0.01%. So much so that just saying you're Grandmaster at the game comes with a little badge of honor and respect in their respective communities. Marvel Rivals, however, changed the curve. Unlike the other games, it is no longer right before the Apex, like to one above all, but it stands actually Grandmaster is 7 full ranks away from one above all. While other games have Grandmaster represent 0.1% of the player base, Marvel Rivals GM consists of the top 7% or more. I'm pretty sure it's 9 or 10% now. If I'm not mistaken, I saw a recent screenshot, this is just me now, of someone hitting GM3 and they screenshot it. It said like 90, you're better than 90.78% of players, or 91.78. So that's like top 8 or 9%. That's kind of like in line of saying out of 100 people, there's 10 of you in there versus, the 0.1%. Out of 100 people, you are like one person. It is a big change. to be top 10% versus top, 1% or 0.1%. Going back to the post, they say this is much more in line with the pre-diamond tier or even platinum in other games. He's saying, comparatively speaking, GM and Marvel Rivals, their trickery is that it feels more in line with the diamond or platinum tier in other games. I know this is usually an unpopular thing to talk about because people naturally desire to feel good about themselves, and being told that Grandmaster is essentially mathematically platinum, comparatively speaking, it robs them of the pride they feel over their rank. But in truth, it's Grandmaster in the name and the name alone. That's why you see your teams in GM, Diamond, or even Platinum make heinous errors, because in reality, they are Platinum, Gold, and Silver. Well, I wouldn't say Silver. Okay, that's a little bit of a stretch here, but I get your point. With rebranded rank names and an overinflated sense of self with it. I agree with this part. The main issue is you are also making these heinous errors. So due to the Dunning-Kruger effect mixed with the renamed tiers, players who are generally decent instead see themselves as infallible, and this leads to toxicity, and egos run completely amok as they think they are excellent at this game, and the random nobodies who grinded 600 games again to GM are in their way of starting a pro gaming career. The truth is, if you take the time to look at the math, look at other games with similar systems, and think rationally, you should be able to see that you have a long way to go to reach the top, even if the game has cleverly tricked you into thinking you're already there. I mean, I mentioned this in the previous post where, like, Grandmaster is the mortal rank, but then you're a celestial being, eternal being, a one above all being. That is like the shtick Marvel is going for, but they're right. It's Grandmaster in this game is just the name by itself. But like people playing in the bracket of GM are kind of like playing with relative like similar skill. There's going to be some outliers who are able to somewhat climb with a somewhat negative win rate, but obviously the chimpanzee is the extreme example, but like probably like a 45% win rate is probably as low as it goes. Like obviously if you're literally a silver player, you're not going to magically hit Grandmaster by grinding 1,000 games. That's impossible if you still have silver mechanics and silver understanding of the game by 1,000 games. Like there's still obviously some like sense of like doing pretty decent and adding value to your team, a baseline for example, but the game does do this, and I think this post kind of like pretty much encapsulated how I feel about it as well, but I wouldn't stretch it as far as like gold or silver. I feel like the most people who say like they've made it to GM, I have a pretty like self-aware Twitch chat, I will say, that a lot of them are like, I hit GM3 in Marvel, but like I'll be honest, I think the lowest I saw was platinum in Overwatch. There was one gold player who says I was gold in Overwatch for like 7 years, but I have hit GM3 in this game. I've never seen a silver player say they made a jump. There is still some sort of substantial baseline you need to hit, but it's true. In name alone, you don't want to deflate their sense of pride, their sense of self. It's very good accomplishment that you're still in the top 9%, 7, 8, 9, 10% of the player base. That's equivalent of hitting diamond in a lot of games. That's very good, like be proud of that accomplishment, but at the same time, you're not the problem. It's the ones who have the overinflated ego and sense of toxicity, who get really toxic and feel like they have a higher superiority or authority than you simply because they hit Grandmaster and they use that title as their gotcha, and they start off every argument, especially in comment sections and social media posts, by saying, "There's your GM player," and it sounds a little obnoxious, but that's just kind of how it goes. I actually kind of mostly agree with this post. Anyways, that's it for me. Thanks for listening to me yap. See you guys next week. Bye.